Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now on the phone is the former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador John Bolton. And Mr. Ambassador, welcome back.
Well, thanks. Glad to be back with you.
Well, even though Russia and the United States reached a deal on getting Syria to give up its chemical weapons, the world powers are fighting over the smaller details. Do you believe in the end that diplomacy can work here, or is this agreement destined for collapse?
Well, I think the agreement will die a death of 1,000 cuts. I don't think we'll see Syria flat out repudiated, but I think by drawing out the implementation, by taking half measures, by not being completely transparent about their chemical weapons program, by using the ongoing fighting in Syria to slow down the work of the UN weapons inspectors, and on and on and on, the Syrians will use this agreement in Geneva to buy time. And I think that was always Russia's objective. I don't think anybody seriously thought Congress was going to authorize the use of military force against Assad. Anybody could see the direction things were moving in Congress. And I think Russia was able to seize on what was soon to be a real political disaster for President Obama to put this agreement in place that I think will strengthen the Assad regime and certainly not result in the destruction of all or maybe even the bulk of Syria's chemical weapons.
The president, in interviews, seems to be at a loss for a plan B if this deal falls through. In your view, does the president have a plan B, and does the administration even have a clear Syria plan?
No, I don't think they have any plan at all. I think that's really the problem, is they've been lurching from one solution to another. It's been a very ad hoc policy with no long-term strategy and not really thinking through the consequences of what they've done. As I think lots of people have observed, these flip-flop back and forth. Do I go to Congress? Do I not go to Congress? Do I go to the UN Security Council? Do I not? Do I use force? Do I not use force? And I think it's that weakness and indecisiveness, really, that our friends and adversaries around the world can see and take advantage of. So I think the administration's lack of compass in Syria certainly going to have negative implications for us in the Middle East, but I'm afraid the negative implications go worldwide. Everybody watches what an American president does, and I'm sad to say, but this performance has been a debacle.
Is the U.S. losing its superpower status as a result?
Well, I don't think so in the near term. Even 4.5 years of bad policy and the risk. I don't even like to think about this, but the risk of 3.5 years more, it's going to hurt the United States. There's no doubt about it. But we were hurt during the administration of Jimmy Carter as well. Ronald Reagan was elected president, and things turned around. So we have to distinguish, even in our own minds, between the president and the country. This is a very, very weak and ineffective president, but that doesn't speak to the nature of the country as a whole. Mm-hmm. If we get 3.5 more years or 8 more years on top of that, if Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden are elected president, with the defense cuts, the implications for our national security infrastructure and the like, then I think it could be a lot more serious, but we're not there yet.
Mr. Ambassador, it's been reported that the Free Syrian Army has been completely demoralized by the U.S.-Russia agreement and that they feel that they've been left high and dry. This as the Assad regime ramps up its attacks. Should the U.S. or the West be doing more to arm the rebels?
No, I don't think we should. I think there's certainly some rebels who would support Western values, but I think there are a lot who would not. Many of them are terrorists, supporters of al-Qaeda. But even those who are not outright terrorists, many of them are supporters of the Syrian equivalent of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I just, given the experience of a Muslim Brotherhood government in Egypt, which we've just seen, I just don't think it's in America's interest to put a Muslim Brotherhood equivalent government into power in Syria, let alone to promote the risk that the terrorists themselves might take over. I think this is a consequence of an administration that's really taken its eye off the real strategic issue in the Middle East, which, despite the tragedy we're seeing in Syria, the real strategic threat to the United States has been from the get-go Iran and its nuclear weapons program. And that's something the administration, I don't think, has ever fully understood.
I want to ask you about Iran in just a second, but first, I have seen you in past interviews say that the U.S. should remove Bashar al-Assad. Is it too late for the U.S. to do that?
Well, I think I favored removing him and the regime back in 2003 when we had 400,000 troops in Iraq. We wouldn't have had to take military action. I think we were simply so powerful in the region then we could have made a lot of changes, but that's not the direction we went in. And we now see, in the wake of the Arab Spring and the rise of terrorists in the Syria context and in Iraq, it's just a very different context now. And I have nothing good to say about the Assad regime, but I'm afraid the replacement, the risk is certainly we'd simply trade one dictator for another, or at a minimum, trade one conflict for another.
Mm-hmm. Last question for you, Mr. Ambassador. Since the election of Iranian President Rouhani, the Iranian government's tone has been described as one of compromise and reason. Rouhani himself has been described as a centrist. Do you think that this could lead to a breakthrough in those stalled nuclear negotiations?
Well, I'm afraid there may be a breakthrough, not for the reason that Rouhani is moderate or that the regime has suddenly become more realistic, but because the naivete of the Obama administration is going to play into the hands of Rouhani and his government, who do want to get the economic sanctions that have been imposed on Iran eased. There's no doubt about that. But there's simply no evidence whatever that these so-called moderates want to do anything to divert the course of Iran's nuclear weapons program, which is drawing closer and closer and closer to crossing the finish line and actually getting nuclear weapons. Let's not forget that the real control over security for Iran lies in the Ayatollah Khatami, the supreme leader, and that is where control over the nuclear weapons program exists. So I think we're about to see the Obama administration, Europe, taken for a ride here by the Iranians, and we could see an agreement that turns out to be very unfortunate, very negative from the U.S. point of view, basically legitimizing Iran's continuing effort to get a nuclear weapons capability and lifting the sanctions that actually take pressure off the Iranian regime.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, as always, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.